All right, y'all. So we are back with episode 4. And listen, if you're like me, you're still healing. If you're like me, you know that in the previous episode, Gay Lisa dropped some bombs on us at the end. And we're all a little bit injured, talking about our level of expertise and our level of competency and our level of confidence in what we know and the rooms that we're showing up in. And so today we are kind of you were staying on the same point of looking at like, all right, we have gone through a lot of imposter syndrome, but what do we now do with this? Like on the other side of it all, how do we get to some place of resolve and some place of like acceptance with it all and what it looks like in our life on a long term? We talked about like the fact that we are kind of settling into this space and knowing that it's maybe a necessary evil, if that's how we want to put it, or like a growing pain in the process. And there's a quote that I heard from Pastor LeBryant Friend from Belong Church in Atlanta. And he said, it was like, I think in 2020, he said, "I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm still tea though." Right. Mm-hmm. And so listen, facts. Because I think a lot of imposter syndrome is the fact that we are trying to be what we believe the prototype to be. We're trying to fit in this space of identity or this box that we set as the standard for whatever situation or context we're in. Even in adulting, there's a like, I expect to be a certain way. And so I think his quote is great in identifying that I am still T. I am still adulting. I am still a PhD student. I am still a master's student. I'm still a therapist. And I don't have to do it the way everybody else does it. And that doesn't need to be the standard that makes it right or wrong. But more so looking at like, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but let's take it a step further. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I am someone's cup of tea. And so how do I embrace the cup of tea that I'm meant to be if we're following that metaphor, although may not be everyone's cup of tea? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so for y'all, like, what have been some of the things that have moved you from a place of this tension in imposter syndrome to more so being able to settle into a place of identity and knowing that you belong here?
Well, for me, I think this is something that is still evolving. I think I've gained somewhat of a framework of what this looks like because of support, honestly, from either colleagues I have in the facility I work in, or through conversations we have with one another, or through conversations I've had with, I made one of my professors, Dr. Rogers, my mentor. I asked him if he could be my mentor and journey with me through this process. And he has reassured me in different ways. What reassurance, what enlightenment, what I can possibly look at when I look at it in a positive way when I view myself in relationship with others as I develop my identity. And it has helped tremendously for me to not look at imposter syndrome as like an obstacle and this concept of this experience that's constantly fighting against me, but as a journey. And as I made mention that last episode about strategy, as a strategy towards actually learning to believe in myself, learning to trust myself instead of being in a space of comparison all of the time, or feeling like I'm a fraud, or dealing with self-doubt. Learning to simply trust the qualities that I have and the experiences that I've had. So I think in a general, concise way, that's the best way to kind of describe what that's looked like for me.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a professor, and there's another one of our professors. Dr. Rogers is incredible. But there's another one of our professors, Dr. Kirsty Williams, who for me has played a huge part in this mentorship role. And there have been many times that I am just not feeling at my best place. And I'll walk into her office and be like, let me tell you all of the things that are bothering me. Let me tell you how uncomfortable I feel in this space, even in preparing, in coming in or thinking about coming into the PhD program. When I was applying, and now being at a place of working through dissertation things, her voice has been extremely helpful in normalizing a lot of this for me. A lot of it is layered because it is like I'm in this new academic space. I'm in a new professional space. I'm in a space of navigating sort of a specialty in racial trauma and diversity. And so it's many new spaces that I'm navigating all at the same time and trying to figure out like, what's really happening here? Like, do I really have what it takes to stay here? And navigating a lot of insecurities in the process. And so her voice in highlighting what my strengths are and highlighting that this is a normal part of the process, and this is developmentally appropriate, and highlighting that, like, there is a discomfort in all of this, but a way to embrace this. And not just embrace it for the sake of like getting over it, but embrace it for my well-being and for the increased level of opportunity that it gives me. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like in the places where I am a voice, her encouragement pushes me to lean into this, and where my voice gets to be even louder because of my experiences. Mm-hmm. So it's been really helpful.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing I thought of is my cohort. So Gelisa mentioned how support comes from colleagues. Mm-hmm. And I thought about my cohort. Oftentimes I'd be in the class, I'm like, I'm going to say something. And they're all like, just say it, like encouraging me. Like, and yeah, just like speak up. This. So I think that also helps me in recognizing like my voice is valuable in the room, and I can step into this space and have something meaningful and really important to say, and people are willing to listen. I think that's maybe one of the things that in imposter syndrome that I was afraid of. I'm like, maybe people aren't willing to listen to me, or I don't have much to add, and so because of that, I'm just not going to say anything. But when you realize like your voice has meaning, that completely changes the game. Mm-hmm. That changes it.
Yeah, as we're going to talking about support and what those external factors look like and helping us to navigate through imposter syndrome, I'm thinking about what even got us to the place where we felt comfortable enough to even ask them or to engage with them about the doubts and the experiences that we've had that have made us resistant to maybe the way we view ourselves or the journey or whatever it is that's going on internally for us. And I think to myself, for me, I think even in relationships with people like Dr. Rogers, Dr. Brandon Rogers, for example, right? At one time I had a conversation with him, and I thanked him for being my hope and my confident holder. And a huge part of that came out of our conversation in that I was unable to kind of navigate through some things for myself. But in me feeling unable to do for myself, it was through relationship that I could also see somebody else who was willing to journey with me in support of that. And so that helped me to feel more comfortable as time kind of went on with sharing more of what my experiences have looked like with imposter syndrome. I think also paying attention to like the fact that this was starting to get like really, really bother me. Mm-hmm. Like it was really having a huge impact on my emotional being, on my well-being, on my ability to fully and find joy, as we've kind of talked about in past episodes. Mm-hmm. I saw how much it was crippling that, and I wanted to fight against it. I got frustrated that I was constantly in my mind about these things. And I thought to myself, if I have people around me who I trust and people who are willing to journey with this through me, who are willing to hold things for me when I can't hold them for myself, how can I find spaces to actually allow for them to be a part of my journey? And that came through active conversations that I've had either with people like Dr. Rogers, or I've had with friends, that I've had with my parents, that I've had with other colleagues, like some of my past colleagues, some of my other classmates that were part of my cohort. We go on walks from time to time and just talk through the process of how on earth are we here, dealing with all the doubt, dealing with all the questions. I think that's kind of what boiled it up to me, getting to that point of like, I need to talk about this, fam. This is too much for me to hold, and I don't think I should be holding it.
I think one of the things too, when you talk about imposter syndrome, somebody before you had experienced imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. And so for me, talking to y'all when I got into the master's program, considering y'all have already been there, that was a huge help, because y'all were able to give me advice, and y'all weren't saying that, okay, this is how you fix it, because y'all told me like, you're gonna feel this for a little bit, like this is normal. But I think the advice of having somebody go before me to say, you're gonna get through this, here are some things that I did, find your own steps, find your own ways to kind of cope with this, has been super helpful, I think, in the process for me personally.
Yeah. You are you are joining to what I'm thinking when Gaylisa asked, like, how do we get to this place of being able to ask them or being able to be honest with the fact that, like, this is something that we're feeling. And I think for me, it was a lot of, number one, their authenticity. And so sort of what we are telling ourselves to be to someone else is to be able to say, like, here I am, this is what it looks like, but also an authenticity that allows us into their thoughts and feelings at the time. And so I'm seeing my professors now, and I respect them in their places and their positions, but them also being like, Danielle, let me tell you what I felt like in my master's and doctoral program. And I'm like, oh, this is a thing? Like, it's not just me, you also feel this. And so they may not be able to always identify with the racial aspects, but they definitely do identify with the academic aspects as we're stretching into this new thing, and finding a way to be. And so them being in a respected place and taking time not just to share about themselves, but to affirm us, I think has been huge. Their affirmation, these people, both of them, Dr. Williams and Dr. Rogers, are huge on affirmation and validation, and in a way that I think has been helpful to us. And so being someone that I respect, and then being able to say, like, Danielle, you are an expert in XYZ, or you're doing a great job in this area, or this really looks like a strong point for you, is helpful in being more of a solid foundation for me to stand on, because in the ways that we've been asking in the past few episodes of, like, am I doing this right? What is this supposed to look like? How do I get to the next level? Their words, their affirmation, their validation are guidance of how to get there. Like, I know that I may not be the best. I don't know that I'll ever be like the top therapist, but it helps to know that I'm doing something in the right direction when people that I respect take time to just say, like, hey, you're doing a great job and I see you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'm also wondering too, as we're talking about our different experiences of feeling willing to do this, feeling that trust, or feeling the desire to have these kind of conversations with these people. I'm thinking about this even in relationships, period. How much having these conversations bring about this, like, true connection, because I know that I can allow for myself to be seen by you. I know that I can lean into you. I know that I can trust what you're also speaking into me, or that you're affirming me in. How valuable that is, and actually helping us to build true connection with one another. And I mean, that's one of the incentives for me. In terms of when I feel like I can trust you in this capacity, how beautiful and rewarding it is to walk away and feel like we have a connection. And the connections might look different, where you might feel closer, with different family or friends versus, like, people in your cohort, things of that nature, for various reasons. But it just enhances the experience and the process, I think, even as either developing clinicians or as practicing clinicians, the idea of what community in our support system looks like, where we can bring the questions that we have about ourselves, bring the fears that we have about ourselves to other people, and know that it's going to be handled well.
I want to put this caveat here too, because I mean, you two mentioned your professors who you're in the field with. Yeah. For me, I completely switched to a different field. Okay. But I really did. I exercise science to psychology. My God. But for me, my people who I would say were supportive or understanding, or who kind of changed my idea about imposter syndrome, would have to be my professors in that exercise science field. Even now that I've switched over, our conversations still look like, how are you doing in this new stage? As a woman, how are you feeling? Like, these are the conversations we're having. Specifically, I want to talk about Dr. Lawler, who has been that person, being able to speak up and say, like, I've been here as a woman, I've been here as somebody who is the only person in my field. And she talks about that fact of having, that feeling of imposter syndrome. But she's still able to relate to me, being from the exercise science world. And so when you're able to find people who you could relate to, not just because they're in your field, but because they have both experienced those same feelings, that is where you connect with people. It's not just marriage and family, but the fact that I'm in these different worlds, and we still have all these same feelings. Yeah.
I think that's a huge point, because we have been leaning towards like those who are similar to us, but the strength in like the fact that I can be supported by people who will never sit in a room with a client like I will, but are still able to see like this is a passion place of yours, and are able to see the places of growth that I'm trying to be in. I think what you're leaning on, and Gay Lisa kind of touched on, is like, yes, as we're leaning into these places of mentorship or support and whatever that looks like, family, friends, or otherwise, a lot of what's necessitated of us is the openness to transparency and openness to accountability. And I think those are the two things that are necessary in sitting with like these growing pains and developing into identity. It is major, necessary, important, vital to be able to show up in a space with someone and be like, let me tell you what I'm genuinely feeling, and know that I will be heard, I'll be affirmed, but also I'll be held accountable as like, okay, here are the ways that you can grow, right? So Dr. Rogers' ability to hear Gay Lisa in her spaces of like, I'm dealing with imposter syndrome, and then further say, this is where you get to build strategy, right? It's someone who won't just leave me in the thing that I'm in, but will challenge me to a different degree. That essentially is helping to build and form what I want. It is what I want identity for me to look like. Not, right. Again, not a stereotype, not a prototype, but like, what does this look like for me in this area?
I think another experience I had with that is in conversations I had like with Dr. Gartner as well, who's also a part of our program, and talking to her about my experiences of kind of having a hard time with adjustment that I think was like a symptom of imposter syndrome. And she helped me to be able to even identify what my relational needs are. Because as we talk about the idea of engaging in relationship with one another and seeking out connection, seeking out support, you have to know kind of what your relational needs are looking like in the first place. So yeah, that's also just another example of that.
Yeah. In this space of, I guess, developing identity, what would you say has been the most difficult part? Like, what has been the greatest challenge?
What has been the greatest challenge? We really just pondering here because no, but like, what has it been? No, the thing is though, is it a thing that it's been so many challenges that we now us now to pick one? Is it's hard, or has there been one that we were like, okay, has been this our hugest challenge? This is the thing that is definitely sticking out. For me personally, I think there's been so many challenges along the way that I'm like, what has been my biggest challenge?
I can give my example if
okay,
that would help.
Yeah, then we'll figure it out.
I think my example for me, it has been finding my lane and keeping my lane. And so like it is one thing to develop in a place or carve out a path in a place that you have never been in. And so that's one level of work. It's another level of work to stay there when you see other metaphorical lanes being built and wanting to lean into those things. And so the ability to like, okay, I have built who I am. I'm refining who I am. Again, we've been talking about sustain in past episodes. How do I sustain this level of growth? How do I just sustain this level of identity and what all of this looks like in the middle of, I guess, just exploring and seeing all the other possibilities that are there, right? So I have identified who I am as a therapist. What does it mean for me to hold to that and not to try to change as I'm growing because I see Gay Lisa being a therapist and I like that way too, right? How do I stay affirmed in my approach, my position, my way of doing things in the midst of just being in an academic community where so many people are so different?
Okay, I'm ready.
She ready?
I'm ready.
She ready?
How do I guess my biggest one would be, how do I represent myself well without diminishing the other parts of myself? So how do I represent my culture? How do I represent my passions well without diminishing those same things? And I guess that's the question of like, can I?
You surely can, girl.
And that's what I think is the truth.
You can.
I can do this.
You surely can.
And there is nobody else like me.
Period.
there's nobody else like me who likes the passions and the things that I put so much effort into.
Right.
There's nobody else like me. Well, there are 1,000 other Bahamians, but there's nobody else like me in the intricacies and the idiosyncrasies that I possess. And so I need to be able to represent myself well.
Mm-hmm.
I owe it to myself
And
in all of my spaces.
I owe it to myself.
Yes.
Oh my God, put that on a billboard. I owe it to myself.
So yes, that is my answer in fullness.
Yeah.
Okay, Lisa Swan, this is now your turn.
Here I am. So I think to the point that you made, though, is like, you know, no, these things are very intricate to who you are, which means that because you have these passions that kind of connect all together, that help to form your identity, nobody also do it in the way that you do. Which brings about a different kind of value as well. But that doesn't mean it's not challenging trying to get to that place. So yeah, no, I feel you. I think with me, one of the greatest challenges I guess I've had is trying to figure out like realistic expectations of myself as I develop this sense of identity. Like a realistic assessment of my abilities, a realistic expectation of like how I should show up as a therapist, or how I should show up as a Black woman, or how I should show up, blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing, in all that I said just now, you know, I use the word should a lot.
We should not shit on ourselves.
You see that? We should not. In our counseling center, one of the things we say, the only curse word is should. And the reason why is because when you keep saying should, it promotes this element of shame. It can, let me put it this way, it can promote this element of shame that develops. And so I think one of the greatest challenges for me is not feeling like I should show up in a certain way. One. And then the next part is being able to have realistic expectations of myself that give myself a fair chance at being able to show up well, without feeling like I have to do something a certain way, but that actually feels authentic to me. But that allows me, though, to be refined well through my experiences, relationships with people, hearing their perspectives, but not feeling like I have to be like that, or feeling like that is the status quo.
Or the standard.
The standard of doing things. So yeah, that's my challenge and my resolve, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think in sort of looking at this holistically, some questions that we can and will continue to ask ourselves, to your point, Dernique, is like, what are the intricacies that make up who I am, right? Like, what are the special parts that other people may not bring to the table, and how do I hold that well? How do I maintain that well? How do I acknowledge the fullness of who I am well in every space, and not feel the need to put down one to pick up another, but really create space for ourselves to be fully ourselves. And with Gay Lisa, kind of working through like, how do I, instead of leaning towards shame, how do I embrace the opportunities to be? And what does it look like for me to show up in these spaces and just flourish and really be who we are, and be able to hold these things well in conjunction with the other people around us, and knowing that the experience or the identities of others should not necessarily dim our own light, but potentially give us our own space to shine our specific light, because the light that I am bringing is not the light that you're bringing, but enhances the fullness of the work that we're doing, or the fullness of the experience.
I often in high school, and I think even through college, my thoughts have always been my only and biggest competition is always me. And so that, for me, I don't know if that's like a great quote to say, but I do think that has pushed me in the sense of like, I'm always in this state of improving. And so, I don't know, I think that is a direction of how we find our identity. And to me, I don't know if that could work for everyone, but I think to me.
Yeah. And I think even building the muscle of being able to affirm ourselves in the way that our support systems do. And so, yes, like academically, Dr. Williams and Dr. Rogers have been huge in being voices in our ears of affirming and validating who we are and our experiences, but being able to build that within myself and remind myself of the things that they have told me or the experiences that I've had. I think is also helpful. Like, not that we are meant to be self-reliant or self-sufficient, but I think after a while there comes a time where we build a muscle of being like, you know what, the only way to sustain this is to remind myself of who I am and what I've done and what I'm capable of doing. The only thing that moves me in a place of progress and not stagnancy is this, like, okay, Danielle, you have done all these things. And the times that I look around and I'm like, who am I and who allowed me to do this? Like, this girl from Brooklyn, Jamaican heritage parents, like, who am I? Like, being a first generation American and all of the things, like, who am I to be in these spaces? And I think there's a poet, and I think it's Maya Angelou, I may be quoting this wrong, but like, who am I not? Right? Like, who am I not? And so being reminded of the parts of who we are and the ways that this contribute to our experiences, and the fact that this is a privilege. This is an opportunity that we get. It is a privilege to be able to embrace my identity fully at a school or on the job or within family and friends. It is a privilege. And so how do I take advantage of this privilege all the time? Because, listen, I'm it. Top tier. High caliber. I'm it.
I think as we kind of conclude our thoughts on this too, a huge aspect that I was reminded of that has really helped me, a huge aspect of my life that's kind of helped me through this, and even helped me to face myself and the challenges is my faith and my relationship with God. Walking through, I guess, more intentional journey of how God sees me. And how you talked about, Danielle, with regard to how those relationships that we have with, like, you know, people who affirm us well, how those things, we can use those aspects to help us to inform ourselves about who we are. And you've shared different experiences of that as well, Journey. I think a huge part of that for me right now has been asking myself, how does Jesus see me?
Ooh,
How does he see me as enough? Does he see me as competent? Does he call me loved? And so I have found so much rest in that. I think as I've kind of been maneuvering through different aspects of my life with regard to doubt, and I think all of that has just enhanced my love for God in a more passionate way. But like we've been talking about, child, this is an ongoing growing pain, but it is a journey that I think when we are intentional about, we reap so much. And so, yeah, Jesus has been a huge part of that for me, and I am forever grateful for his love for me and how he has made me.
I think my last thoughts on this whole idea, we talked about, you know, all these support systems, and now we bring in the whole aspect of faith, and I'm like, we have to end on faith, right? We have to end on the fact that God has been that source for us. I had a conversation with Gaylisa over the Christmas break, and the thought was, on the days I feel the least like myself, God meets me there. And so with that being said, I hope that the thing that we get from this is, on the days that we feel the imposter syndrome, on the days we feel all of these things, or when we don't even feel competent, I pray that God meets us there. And he'll keep meeting us there, and meet us there next week when we talk about more of our journey and the theme of growing pains. Thank you so much for listening to us spiel about all of our thoughts and ideas.
Yes.